Well, good morning, everybody. We're here on April 13th now for the final budget hearing with Metro Public Schools to discuss their budget. And before I begin, let me recognize that we have several council members present: Walter Hunt, Ronnie Stein, Sean McGuire, and Erica Gilmore. I guess before we get started, Dr. Register, if you could introduce the people with you. And
yes, sir. Michael Hayes is chair of the finance committee of the board, and we have Chair Gracie Porter, Vice Chair Mark North. And I won't take time to introduce all of the executive staff, but we have most of my executive staff here who are available to address specific questions that may come.
Okay. We held budget hearings with the other Metro departments at the end of March. This one is always falls a little later on the calendar, so we can have better information on the type of funding our schools will receive from the state. Dr. Register, before I turn things over to you, I want to take a moment to discuss our history over the past 4.5 years to set the stage for where things stand with public education in Nashville. As we all know, in my first term, the city and citizens of Nashville were focused on dealing with the severe national recession. The impact of the down economy is easily evident when you look at revenue growth or the lack thereof over the last 4 years. During my first term, revenue used for our city budget grew by a mere 2%. And if you compare that to the 4 years prior, when our country and our city was experiencing strong economic growth, revenue grew by 20%, and the city's budget increased by $210 million. We were faced with a daunting challenge of making the most of limited resources. As I have said time and time again, our city's priorities should be reflected in our budget. For us, that's schools and public safety, and the top priorities should get the most resources. We have done just that over the last 4 budgets, and I remain committed to doing that once again this year. Educating our children and keeping our city streets safe are 2 of the most fundamental functions of our city government. Everything else we do as a city, whether it's attract jobs, new businesses, families, or tourists, all of that is dependent upon us getting public safety and education right. So to balance our budget and still meet the needs of our schools and police and fire departments, the rest of Metro government has had to learn how to do more with less. Most departments have sustained cuts between 10 and 15%, and we have 668 fewer full-time Metro employees today when I took office. I believe this was the right decision to make. The investments we made in our schools are paying off, and because we as a city have made it a priority to invest in our schools, the private sector has stepped up and done the same, donating millions of dollars for innovative reforms that are truly changing students' lives. Because of this, our schools are moving in the right direction, and there is excitement about the direction in which things are heading. We brought Teach for America to Nashville. This innovative program trains the country's top college graduates to be teachers in the most challenging schools. The data shows that Teach for America has been a resounding success in our schools. We also brought the New Teacher Project, another group that provides quality training for people who did not follow the traditional teacher training path, but who have a passion to close the achievement gap and to teach in our most challenged neighborhoods. Again, we have received very good results. More national charter schools are coming to Nashville after a change in state legislation that I supported, and we're seeing more high-quality local charter schools created through the incubator that we helped found. Now, parents have more options for their children, and students can attend traditional public schools or charter schools here in Nashville. And those schools will continue to come and grow, providing more quality education choices for families. In 2008, we opened the Attendance Center, a place that is providing early intervention for students who are truant rather than waiting until the problem is out of hand. As a result, we have seen dramatic drops in truancy, and I want to compliment the schools for their cooperation and the hard work you all done making attendance a priority. In 2007, I formed a Special Education Advisory Council to assist in identifying concerns surrounding the education of our students with disabilities and to recommend reforms. That group of parents, educators, nonprofit leaders, and other community leaders worked diligently for 4 years, recommending sweeping reforms that were then implemented. I am confident that students with disabilities in this district are in a better place than they were 4 years ago, and that work continues. We also created the Limitless Library Program, bringing the vast resources of our world-class Nashville Public Library into our school libraries. And I think some of these statistics are astonishing. During the library budget hearing last month, our interim director, Tricia Bengal, informed us that circulation in school libraries as of mid-March was over 70,000. That's like adding a whole new branch library to our system. Also, and this one gives me a lot of pleasure, also the number of Metro school students with library cards went from 9,000 to 24,000. That's more than 15,000 new library card holders. Limitless Libraries is making a difference in how much our children read and the literature they have access to. We initiated the new Music Makes Us program, an exciting initiative to make our music program the best in the country. Through that program, our schools will collaborate with the music industry to truly revolutionize music education in Music City. Earlier this year, we announced that Warner Records will sponsor a record label at Pearl Cone High School. Students will run the label under mentors from Warner. Students across our public schools will be able to audition to be on the label, and their music will be available on iTunes and other music sites, with the proceeds funneling back into the Music Makes Us program. This summer, we will open the Scholars Academy, a program to assist rising ninth graders in preparing for high school and to help them set the stage for post-secondary success. I'm looking forward to watching that program grow and flourish and eventually help increase the college graduation rate for Metro students. All of these reforms have been made possible by continuing to make education a priority. Are we where we need to be? I think not, but I am confident that we are moving in the right direction. And so now I want to turn this over to Dr. Register to discuss some other improvements that I might not have mentioned and to present your budget ideas. Dr. Register.
Thank you, Mayor Dean. We'll let Mr. Hayes start.
Sure, thank you. On behalf of the Metropolitan Nashville Public Board of Education, we'd like to thank you, Mayor Dean, for your continued support of the public schools. The board is extremely confident in Dr. Register and his administrative staff. We have a phenomenal working relationship. I am excited about the changes that Mr. Henson and Dr. Register are going to present to you today. And I'm also excited about the growth that we're seeing as a city. Some of our budget constraints are really relative to this growth. And you'll see some pretty significant increases in our budget because we are adding students. We're adding people to Middle Tennessee. And this is requiring more money for the school system. One of the things that I'm personally most excited about that Dr. Register will discuss is our proposed compression of the teachers' salary schedule. The reforms that Dr. Register has made around hiring and the ability to go out in February and March and hire new teachers, and our proposed restructuring of that should really enable us to bring in top-notch talent. You referenced a couple of other changes the Music Makes Us. We're excited about that. The new teacher project, Teach for America, TFA teachers have been performing at an extremely high level. Our investments in charter schools have been paying off. KIPP, LEAD, both are among the top in the state. We're a growing district in a city, and I do hope that we will continue to be the first choice for families in Nashville for public education. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hayes. Mayor Dean, I'd like to begin, I have to begin by acknowledging the support from you and from Metro Council for continuously supporting public education in metropolitan Davidson County. Your actions show that you mean what you say, we have to acknowledge that I think we're among the leaders in the country in tough economic times for several years now. And the support of Metro Council and you, Mayor Dean, is greatly appreciated on behalf of the young people in Davidson County and on behalf of our community. So I want to say that. I think at this time there's an unprecedented opportunity that we have here in Tennessee and particularly here in Nashville. We began a transformation process of our school system 3 years ago, and the stars have aligned, so to speak. We've seen sweeping legislative changes for the past 2 years coming out of the state legislature that have made reform very much more possible and probable for us. Our transformation effort, MNPS Achieves, is our district-wide strategy, has taken root. We're implementing, and we're seeing great improvements as a result of that. And I'd like to point out a couple of areas of real reform that we think are very important and very significant. High school reform in this district is institutionalized and will continue to develop. The academies of Nashville, 42 academies, have gained national recognition, and in my opinion, and I think I'm correct, we have the very best high school transformational effort in the country, and it is institutionalized. It is pervasive in our school district now. The business partnerships that have been promoted are prime examples of deep community involvement in this effort, in this collaborative effort to drive reform. We now have more than 160 business partners that are deeply involved in the academies of Nashville and involved in creating rigorous, relevant, motivational curriculum for students in our district. A new statistic that we've picked up because we have teacher externships that are occurring again this summer. By the end of this summer, we will have had 62 teams of teachers, more than 325 teachers in our high schools participate in externships with area business partners over the summer. They're taking what they're learning back to the schools and sharing with students and making their curriculum very relevant as a result of that. Our non-traditional alternative high schools have been, without question, successful. The Academy at Old Cockrell has recently been recognized by the National Academy Association as winning the national award for excellence in alternative programs. Old Cockrell and the Academy housed at Hickory Hollow will have graduated roughly 1,000 students by the end of the summer. We hope to reopen the Academy at Opry Mills. That is a part of our budget request this fall. That will give us 3 of these programs and even more graduates and success stories from them. We're also proposing in our budget a bridge school, a school to serve grades 8, 9, and 10 who need additional support. We feel like that is perhaps the last gap where we really lose students, where our dropout rate hits us, and we want to close that gap, and we think this bridge school will help us do this. These are no frills programs. They're highly cost efficient. They cost less per pupil than traditional programs, and we're seeing great results from that. In the case of the academies, it gives a lot of our students that extra opportunity to graduate with a real diploma that in many places students don't have that opportunity. Advanced studies are expanding in elementary grades through high school grades. The expansion of our Encore program for academically gifted students is now offered in every elementary and middle school. That was not the case just a year ago. Middle school courses for high school credit are being expanded rapidly. We're very pleased with the work that's going on there. And I'd like to point out something that we don't talk about very often, but for academically enriched programs, we have several K-12 pathways that are being developed in our school system now. Examples are the International Baccalaureate program in the Hillsborough cluster, the Paideia schools, culminating at East Nashville High School, new name for East Nashville Magnet High School, the STEM programs in grades K through 12 and from elementaries into middles and into high schools. I'd like to recognize the support that we've received from Vanderbilt University in developing our STEM programs and our science programs. We think they're second to none in terms of quality. We've increased our advanced placement courses across the system. We have enhanced dual enrollment. And Mayor Dean, I want to thank you for your support with the effort to close that tuition gap. Many of our students can't afford to pay dual enrollment tuition, and we now are developing partnerships with community colleges so that our students who need the help can get those dual enrollment courses without having to pay tuition. That's a great partnership that we're very proud of. Our aggressive and targeted middle and high school reforms have helped us lower our dropout rate, and I'll quote this number because it's a very positive number in my way of thinking, from 6.7% to 2.2% on our dropout rate in just 4 years. That is an event dropout rate. That means that's a calendar year for all grades. 2.2%, all grades of dropouts, and we think that number and that trend line is very significant. We've also developed an innovation zone to provide aggressive turnaround strategies and supports for our lowest performing schools. We have a partnership with Tribal Education Group from Great Britain that is helping us develop this year and put into place aggressive strategies for significantly turning around low performing schools. We have developed and we're continuing to develop unique conversion charters at Cameron and now at Brick Church coming up this next year in partnership with Lead Charter Schools and the Achievement School District now. We are seeing real success at Cameron Middle School in all grades with a conversion strategy. We're building an inspirational schools partnership with 33 schools that will focus on what schools are doing well. Those are schools that are focused schools, and sharing best practices between these schools and developing this turnaround strategy. Our strategy influenced the state model for school turnaround, and you can see our model reflected in other cities in the state this year. To sustain the transformations we're seeing in our schools, we have to focus on what I think is the basis and the core of a lot of our budget requests. We have to focus on recruiting and keeping and supporting the very great teachers and leaders that we need. To that end, Nashville's asset is going very well. And I'll point out that Mayor Dean and I co-chaired the development of asset starting over 2 years ago to help us create a system of having great teachers and great leaders in our district. Teacher response has been excellent to that, and I want to give you one example of the success that we have. We have a very bright young teacher who was planning to leave education this year and enter into a different career. He was one of our first cohort for our Teacher Leadership Institute, and that experience this past year has convinced him to stay not only in education but also in metropolitan Nashville public schools. We've changed our processes to allow us to hire much earlier, giving us greater opportunity to hire the very best young teachers for our schools. For the first time, we're holding a district hiring fair April 21st of this year. 88 of our schools are participating in this, and we have invited 400 applicants, and those are the top of the list applicants, including Teach for America and New Teacher Project and the other applicants, very best applicants from our area colleges and universities. We know our recruiting efforts are working, but we need to continue the momentum. We need to offer better benefits and incentives to teach in Metro because we want the very best teachers for our young people. And a major component of our budget increase is to raise starting pay for teachers to $40,000. compressing the first 5 years of our salary schedule so that people who work for the first 5 years would make that starting salary. Currently, our beginning salary ranks 27th in the state. That's not good enough when we're the major urban system in the state. This change would raise us to 3rd and put us very, very close to the beginning salary in Memphis and Shelby County. We feel like our teachers deserve higher pay. Our district will never be the easiest place to work. We want it to be the best place to work, and we want to recruit the very best teachers here and give them the best support system that we can. And we're already seeing results just from the rumors of us being able to raise beginning pay. This year in our school system, we have begun implementing the Common Core standards, rigorous new academic standards that are being phased in every grade level in every school in Nashville. Common Core standards streamlined existing standards, and we're asking teachers to dig much deeper into the curriculum. The goal is to prepare all of our students for college and career, and to give them an advantage when they graduate from our schools. Common Core standards are forcing our teachers to change the way they teach. And it's very much a goal of ours to have an impact in every one of our 5,500 classrooms in this district. I would like to mention also that our support employees are a major asset to our school system and to the young people in our school system. These men and women are critical to the success of our students. And they've not received a cost of living increase in 5 years. We would like to show our support for our support employees with a 2% cost of living raise that we've proposed. We've talked about school-based transformations, human capital transportations, but there's a third piece of the puzzle that's critical to student success, and that is in the area of capital needs and capital improvement. And everyone around this table and in this room, I think, knows that capital expenditures have had, out of economic necessity, have been slowed in the school system. Our current capital needs list is $185 million. The average age of our school buildings is 42 years. Major renovations and expansions are needed. Our enrollment projections for next year are to increase 1,700 students. That's an annual event. It's the last 3 years we've seen increases like that, similar to that, every year. So we have a combination of capital needs that include expansion needs, but also renovation needs for old buildings that are needed in a state of repair. We have infrastructure needs that we've not been able to address. We have $11 million in needs for school buses. We have information technology IT needs that are mounting in our district, and we feel like these are very important to our success. The support we are feeling from our elected leaders, from you, from other people in the business community is tremendous. We feel like momentum's in our favor now, but we have to keep the sense of urgency and to maintain our focus if we're truly going to be successful and transform public education in Nashville and Davidson County. Transformations we're now seeing must be sustained for years to come. Race to the top funding that we're using very effectively is going to expire. It will be used up in 2 years, and so we have to be very diligent now as we look to the future in our district. I want to close my part of this, and I'm going to turn it over to Chris to speak to the budget, the detail of the budget, and to begin answering questions. But I want to close with one of our national advisors, internationally renowned Andy Hargraves, who is recognized as one of the world experts in transformational change in public education. Andy was here a couple of months ago, and his parting comment in closed session with our executive staff was that this is the first time since the mid-90s that he has truly been excited about educational reform in this country. And he thinks that Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools can be the model for reform in this country if we're focused, if we stay focused, and if we stay diligent. And with that, I'll conclude and ask Mr. Henson, Chief Financial Officer, to present the details of the budget. Chris?
Thank you. Good morning. And first, before we walk through the budget documents themselves, I've got a one-page sheet that's in landscape form that I've put in front of you that I wanted to touch on. It lists some of our outstanding items that we still don't have included in the budget proposal. We do have numbers for the Metro self-insured liability reserve for our buildings and contents insurance. And that's reflective of about a $124,000 increase. We do have that increase included in our budget proposal. We also have received a number for our employee injured on duty cost for our support staff. That number comes through the Metro Employee Benefit Board. It's reflecting about a $242,000 increase over the current year budget. We are told that that number will be revised in the future and increased. And so when we receive a revised number, we will, of course, include that as we move forward. There are still 3 items that we have yet to receive for fiscal year 12-13. The first is the Metro ITS internal service charge. You can see the current year budget is approximately $2.2 million. We've carried that forward into the 2012-13 budget proposal. We've carried that number forward. When we receive a new number, then we, of course, will update. Also, the Metro Radio Shop internal service charge, we haven't received a number for that, as well as the property tax refund for the MDHA tax increment eligible properties. We've carried forward that $4 million number into the 12-13 budget proposal. So just wanted to point those out to let you know that when we receive those numbers, of course, if they do change from the current year, then the budget proposal itself will change correspondingly. If I could walk you through the budget document itself, it's a bound copy that you have in front of you. Let you know, first of all, that all of these budget documents are included on the Metro Schools website for anyone to review. And if you can turn to the first page, you'll see that at the bottom right corner is the page number. And so page 1 in the top right corner is the document number 1. And typically, as we do, we'll begin with document number 1, which is intended to be a summary of changes from the current year budget of $674 million. And we'll start at the top, as we always do, with employee compensation. Over 80% of our operating budget is composed of salaries and benefits, or positions or people. And so, therefore, we have recurring fixed costs, just like the general government does, regarding employee compensation. The first item is the certificated employee salary step increase, approximately $5.5 million. Approximately 67% of our certificated employees are eligible for a step increase, meaning they have not topped out on the salary scale. The next item is the certificated 2.5% state salary schedule increase that was included in the governor's budget proposal. And if you apply that 2.5% state salary schedule increase to the MNPS teacher salary schedule, it equates to just under a 2% across-the-board raise. So we've included that $6.6 million number in the budget proposal. Our certificated employees insurance program is administered and governed by the Employee Insurance Trust, which is made up of school board members and MNEA representatives. They have voted back in January for a 10.1% increase to bring that insurance trust fund to a more healthy level. It is a 75%, 25% split, 75% paid by the employer, 25% paid by the employee. The estimated cost on that 10.1% increase is almost $4.8 million. The certificated pension rate, all of our certificated employees are required to be a part of the state retirement plan, which is the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System. There actually was a decrease in the employer contribution rate for that defined benefit plan from 9.05% of payroll to 8.88% of payroll. This is on a 2-year cycle, so we do know that for the 13-14 fiscal year, we will also have an 8.88% employer contribution rate, and we've reflected that $500,000 reduction in our budget proposal. We have a support salary step increase for our support employees. Approximately 82% of our support employees would receive a step increase at a cost of $2 million. And then, as Dr. Register indicated, we are including a 2% across-the-board salary schedule increase for our support employees. This will be the first across-the-board raise for them since 2007-2008, a cost of $1.9 million. All of our support employees are considered Metro government employees for benefit purposes. Therefore, all of their benefits are administered by the Metro Employee Benefit Board. So we've included the insurance increase estimated at 7.5% at mid-year at January, $725,000 increase. This is the same 75%, 25% split as our certificated employees, 75% being paid by the employer, 25% being paid by the employee, as well as the support employee pension increase, again coming from the Metro Employee Benefit Board, reflecting that $400,000 increase here. The subtotal for employee compensation is approximately $20.7 million. In the middle of the page, we have some other additions that I wanted to point out. The first, as Dr. Register indicated, we are projected to grow approximately 1,700 additional students in the coming year, which we have been growing at that rate now for the last 3 years. This projection would take us over 81,000 total students in the school district. What we do typically is we look at a pool of teachers at this point in the year, regular education teachers, EL or English learner teachers, as well as our career and technical education or CTE teachers. Since master schedules are not yet completed, we're still operating with early preliminary student estimates. And so we pool the total number of teachers, and then once the numbers are better defined, then we make sure that we categorize those teachers in the proper account. So this 100 teachers is for regular education, exceptional education, as well as English learner teachers at a cost of $5.6 million. We are opening a new school this year. The new Cane Ridge Elementary School will open. I have a separate document, document number 6, which shows the additional costs associated with opening the new Cane Ridge Elementary School, 13 positions, and other non-personnel costs that would total $1.1 million. We'll look at that in just a minute. Inflationary increases and other required costs. We have inflationary increases on our utility accounts. We use the same inflationary factor that Metro government uses on the utility accounts, plus we have those Metro accounts where we have some increases that I've previously mentioned, as well as some inflationary factors applied to some of our supply and materials accounts, particularly in maintenance and transportation, at a cost of just under $4 million. This next year, we are adding 3 student instructional days to the school calendar. Therefore, some of our support staff work calendars would need to be increased by 3 days, particularly school-based employees, office personnel, as well as our school bus drivers. We increase those by the corresponding 3 days that we're increasing the number of student instructional days at a cost of $475,000. We're opening 2 additional charter schools this coming year, which will take us to a total of 13 charter schools. We also have our existing charter schools projecting growth, some of which are planning to add additional grades to their schools. And so we've put this operating transfer here, which would transfer over to the charter school fund and then be distributed out to the charter schools based upon their student enrollment. We are estimating an additional 756 charter school students, as well as an increase in the per pupil amount that would go out to the charter schools. Total additions for the top half of the page totaled $39.4 million, a 5.8% increase. The bottom portion of the page would be the proposed changes, many of which Dr. Register has already touched upon. The first would be the asset implementation, where we are proposing to compress the steps on the teacher salary schedule so that the beginning pay for teachers with a bachelor's degree would be $40,000. We're also proposing to compress the top end of the teacher salary schedule so that step 25 was moved to step 15 so that teachers can get to the top pay quicker. So it's a compression on both ends of the teacher salary schedule at a proposed cost of $5.9 million. We do have a federal Teacher Incentive Fund, or TIF grant. There is a local match requirement with that federal TIF grant, which I believe involves just over 20 schools, 20 of our high-need schools. That local match requirement this year is $292,000. We have the new teacher project contract increase included at an increase of $261,000. This was something where we were actually able to reduce our budget last year when the new teacher project received a federal Investing in Innovation, or I3 grant. So we were able to reduce our original contract with the new teacher project downward because they did receive that grant. And then there is a corresponding increase in the local requirement as that grant goes through its term. And so that will continue to increase, but still be lower than what we would have had if they had not received that grant. This year on textbooks is the literature adoption. The state has advised that school districts across the state adopt, but not necessarily purchase, the new literature adoption because of questions relating to its aligning with Common Core standards. So we're reflecting a $2 million decrease in our textbook budget, which still leaves $6.5 million remaining in the textbook budget. The next line is health services contract increases through the Metro Health Department contract that we have. Metro Health Department provides all of our nursing services to almost all of our schools. There are some that are covered by Vanderbilt, and then Red Cross provides our vision and hearing screenings to our students. We have some increases for our English language learner department for increased translation specialists as well as parent outreach translators. The federal SLC, or Smaller Learning Communities grant, is ending, and so we want to be able to continue much of what was being done through that grant, where a total of 16 schools would be handled through the local budget. And you can see the cost of most of that is stipends to our teachers, teacher leaders in that particular program. Account 2350 is a new account, a new function for the Music Makes Us initiative. We've included 5 positions at a cost of $541,000. We can look at that account separately if you would like. All of that is included in that account 2350. As Dr. Register indicated, we are proposing to add 2 non-traditional schools. The first is the reopening of the Academy at Opry Mills, while continuing with the Academy at Hickory Hollow and the Academy at Old Cockrell. The second is the opening of the new Nashville Bridge School for grades 8 through 10. Both of those are reflected in document number 5, so we can look separately at document number 5. You can see the increased cost there of $2.1 million for those 2 non-traditional schools. State extended contract funding through the governor's budget proposal has been proposed to be reduced by 1/3, and so we're reflecting that reduction in the extended contract account. Extended contract, just like Career Ladder, is flow-through funding from the state where we receive revenue in and then disperse it out to the teachers. Total proposed changes, about $9.5 million, which brings us to a total operating budget request of $722.9 million, or a 7.3% increase, which reflects about a $48.9 million increase and a total increase of 191 positions, the majority of course, those being additional teachers. Any questions on page 1 or document number 1 before we get into some of the detail? If you'll turn to page 2, I'll just touch on this page. Page 2, document number 2, is intended to reflect only proposed position changes in the budget, so every position change in the budget is reflected here. Number of positions reduced at the top, number of positions added at the bottom, a total at the bottom you can see 191. Page 3, document number 3, is a landscape document. It's reflective of our 10-month support employee work calendars. It's basically unchanged except for the increase of 3 additional student instructional days, which would take us to 176 7-hour student instructional days. So our 10-month support employees, of course, are paid for the number of student instructional days plus some other days that they're paid for. 16 paid time off days, which are for vacation and holidays that they're paid for. Orientation, training, and administrative days, they're paid to come in and work. These additional days that students aren't in school, which takes us to the total number of paid days by position. Page 4, document number 4, is a detail of account number 2600, which is our alternative learning centers are included here. We have 3 of those. The one at Baxter, the one that previously or currently is at Cone, which we are proposing to move to the Bass facility, and then the one out at McCann. Total number of positions in account 2644. Total budget of approximately $2.9 million. If we go and look in the line item budget, document number 8, at account number 2600, you'll see 44 positions and this $2,897 figure. The next page, page 5, document number 5, our non-traditional schools, we have a separate account, account number 2650. This is to provide more detail for that particular account. These are all of our non-traditional schools, starting with Middle College, which is housed at Nashville State, Big Picture, which is housed at the Martha Vaught facility, the Academy at Old Cockrell, the Academy at Hickory Hollow, and then the proposed new Academy at Opry Mills. Our virtual school, the Transitions program, and then the Nashville Bridge School for grades 8 through 10. Total for account 2650, 98 positions and just over $7.1 million. Again, you'll see that in the line item budget for account 2650 as a total. Document number 6, page 6. This is the separate document for, we break out costs associated with opening a new school, in addition to, of course, the capital costs of constructing the building. We have additional operating costs when a new school is opened. This would be account number 2700. Cane Ridge Elementary is proposed to open with 747 students. You can see the additional positions, site-based positions that are required when opening a new school. Principal, assistant principal, counselor, librarian. We're adding 2 pre-K classrooms, secretary, bookkeeper, clerk, 2 general assistants, a library clerk, as well as the 2 pre-K assistants for those pre-K classrooms. We do include in the budget different supplies for leveled readers, library books, instructional equipment, etc. We do allocate out into this account the additional estimate of utility costs as well as the additional custodial service and care of grounds for opening a new school. Total 13 positions, just over $1.1 million.
But that number doesn't include the teachers, right?
The thinking is the teachers would follow the students from the schools that the students are coming from, and so we don't include anything in for teachers. Page 7, document number 7. These are the additional resources pursuant to the student assignment plan that were a part of the approval of that plan in account 2710. It has a separate account, a separate schedule here to provide the detail. You can see the elementary schools at the top part of the page that were identified in the plan to receive additional resources. Pearl Cone High School and the two middle schools, McKissick and John Early, on the bottom part of the page to receive additional resources. Particularly, these resources encompass additional school counselors for these schools, more teachers for these schools to lower the pupil-teacher ratio, additional social workers for these schools, as well as we've included the transportation costs for bus drivers and fuel, so that students that take advantage of the zoned option choice, where they want to continue to go to a school outside of the Pearl Cone cluster, the Pearl Cone zone, can do so. So we include the transportation costs there. There's differentiated pay for teachers, administrators, and staff, a 5% increase for those teachers and staff at the schools designated. Some of those schools have the 5% differentiated pay. Some of the schools have 10 additional professional development days added to their paid schedule, which is the equivalent of 5% since their work calendar is 201 days. The total for account 2710 is 81.5 additional positions at a cost of over $5.8 million. You can see down at the bottom part of the page, this account represents additional resources over and above the regular staffing formula. The total for the differentiated pay, the 5%, is just over $1.5 million for those schools designated to receive that 5% additional differentiated pay. And then you can see what the ratio that was included in the student assignment plan for counselors, social workers, as well as the teacher-pupil ratio, what those are for these particular schools. Any questions about document number 7? The next page, document number 8, on page 8, this is the detailed line item budget, 25-page line item budget. I'll again go through as far as how this is organized, and of course we can come back and look at any account that you would like. Column C is the current year number of positions. Column D, current year budget. Columns E and F are reflective of proposed changes to positions and budget, which results in columns G and H for the number of proposed positions in 2012-13 budget proposal, as well as the proposed budget. Column I is for remarks. We've tried to provide explanatory comments and remarks for a number of the accounts so that additional detail can be given relating to those accounts, particularly for the positions that are included in the salary lines. If you could turn over from page 8 to the end of document number 8, or close to the end, on page 31. You can see when you get to page 31 at the bottom, this would be the grand total, adding 191 positions, adding $48.9 million, resulting in a budget request of approximately $722.9 million. If you could,
on page 8, where you have alignment Nashville,
yes.
so that's 150,000.
That's the amount that the school district contributes to Alignment Nashville.
And do you know how long you've been at that level, or how long you've been making that contribution?
It's been for a number of years. I don't know the exact number, but 4 or 5 years at least.
We might say that we, in conversation with Alignment Nashville this year, they asked for some increase, and we basically discussed with them providing office space, so we're going to let them occupy some office space in lieu of a requested increase.
If you go over to page number 33, what I try to do is to include a listing sorted in alpha order by account name, so that if you have a general idea of what the account may be called, you can find the account number in the detailed line item budget, which is document number 8. Any questions about the general purpose operating budget request before we go on page 36 to the food service or nutrition services fund budget request?
If you could go back to page 7 on the student assignment plan. And you mentioned of the transportation costs, that's for students families that select to go outside the zone.
Yes.
How many students is that?
I don't have the current number. We can provide that to you. We can get that to you. But that was a part of the plan to allow students who reside in the Pearl-Cohn cluster to be able to take advantage of something called zone choice option, which allows them to go to schools in the Hillwood cluster if they so choose, with transportation provided.
Okay. And then another question that from earlier, how many teachers have last year that you received through the new teachers project?
Approximately 80.
Approximately 80?
Yes, and we're looking at a similar number this year, and we're looking at also a similar number for Teach for America for this year. 80 Teach for America.
And how have the new teacher project teachers done? Have they?
Very well.
Very well.
Yes.
Page 36 is the cover page for the Nutrition Services Fund. This is a self-supporting enterprise fund. There are no local dollars going into the Nutrition Services Fund. So turn to page 37. This is a summary of budgeted revenue and expenditures for this fund. We'll start at the top, budgeted revenue. The vast majority of revenue into the Nutrition Services Fund is federal funding through the USDA meal reimbursements. $29.4 million is the estimate. Of course, we also have revenue coming in for sales of meals, lunch sales, breakfast sales, a la carte sales, and there's a very little amount coming into the fund from the state matching, $340,000. Total budgeted revenue estimate at $38.7 million. On the expenditure side, of course, the majority of the costs would be for personnel, salaries and benefits. The next largest, of course, would be the purchase of food at an estimate of $12.2 million. We do charge back to the Nutrition Services Fund the cost for utilities for the kitchens, and so we've got $960,000 included in their expenditures for utilities. That's a charge back to them. Total budgeted expenditures of $38.7 million. They're reflecting revenue and expenditures estimate to be the same. The next page puts the expenditures into the same format as the operating budget, line item budget, to show a little more detail relating to the nutrition services budget. Total number of positions, 792. You can see some of the things there, majority, of course, as I said, being personnel costs and food costs. The $38.7 million is the same as on the previous page. The meal prices are over on the bottom left. There's not a proposal to change meal prices from the current year. You can see what the costs, the meal prices are for breakfast and lunch.
Curious, I just haven't really focused on this part of the budget before, but obviously you have a large fund balance in that, and that's obviously it's just generated over the years, with expenditures less than what revenues collected.
There is also a recommendation, if not a requirement, to have several months operating budget in the child nutrition program.
And so the complete cost of the food service is borne in this budget. benefits, salaries for all the employees and all that. And these employees are those outside the total number of employees that you showed earlier on the total school budget?
These are outside the total that are included in the operating budget.
Right, that's what I meant, yeah.
Yes,
And so,
these are.
all right, and then have you ever gone back, I mean, obviously this is the cost of services, but obviously there's a number of other staff time spent on working on the school budget. Have you ever done like a low cap charge back from this fund to the general budget of the schools?
There is a provision that allows for districts to charge back an indirect cost rate. We have looked at that in years past and determined that it would require them to increase meal prices. They would have a difficult time with the cost of the staff in relation to the minimal reimbursement that they receive from USDA for the meal costs themselves, that it would be detrimental to the fund. We have looked at it. It's something we can continue to look at in the future. But we do charge back for the utilities, as I said, but we haven't applied an indirect cost rate for other kinds of things that the district does on the behalf of this fund.
And I assume the utility increase is the same as you did for the general school fund.
Yes. And it's based upon, we have a consultant that goes out and looks at all of the kitchens and gives us what the estimated cost is for those utilities.
And I don't know, that, I mean, the discussion, but I assume this, I don't know this, but the fund balance is probably larger. Is it larger than what you're legally required to have, you think?
It's a little larger. The way that the way that they calculate it in the school nutrition program office is their strong recommendation is 3 months of operating costs in fund balance, and it's not 3 months of 12 months. It's 3 months of operating months, and so it's basically 3 months of 9 months, as their recommendation for fund balance. If you go to page 39, again showing the employee work calendars for our food service employees, no change except for the number of student days. As I've mentioned, you can see paid time off days, vacation for holidays is the same, 16. And then the additional days that these employees are paid to come in and work when students are not present for things such as orientation, training, and administrative functions, and then their total paid days. If you go to page 40 is our federal programs and grants cover page. This is always difficult at this time of year because the federal fiscal year is October 1 to September 30th, and so what we're trying to do is make estimates for the next year with very preliminary information. This is all flow-through funding, very prescriptive in how these funds can be spent. What we try to do at this point in the year is to have a placeholder amount here until the federal budget is approved, and we have to also, of course, make it reflective of what the estimated expenditures will be from July 1 to June 30th rather than October 1 to September 30th. And so we've got the projection, the latest projection here and I'll mention just some of the larger items. Of course, Title I is the largest of the federal grants. We're estimating $32.1 million in the Title I program. Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, federal funding at estimated $17.9 million for next year. We are looking at continuing to spend the Race to the Top, First to the Top money with that 4-year grant. Previously mentioned the Teacher Incentive Fund, or TIF grant. We have the Magnet School Assistant Program grant, the MSAP grant at $4 million projected to spend. Federal Title II, school improvement grants. The CTE federal funding is called Carl Perkins Career and Technical Education at just under $1.5 million. Title III for our English language acquisition program, And then we do include a contingency at the bottom in anticipation of any new and additional grant awards. We're receiving grants throughout the year. Of course, if we don't receive the revenue, we're not going to spend on the expenditure side, but this just is, again, a placeholder for those new grants that quite possibly would be coming into the district during the year. We have an estimate in this fund of $96.2 million. Again, this is a placeholder amount, flow-through funding. You'll see that there's nothing included in here for federal stimulus funding. That funding has all been spent as required. That funding has ended, as well as the Federal Education Jobs Program funding, which ended last year. And so you would have seen something to that effect last year and the year before, not included anymore since that funding term has ended.
Chris, on that subject, are there any significant differences year over year? I don't have it in front of me on these projected amounts, and is there anything new on this list?
From last year, well, let me start with the first part of your question. There's not really any significant differences in the federal funding that we receive every year. Slight differences, but nothing major. As far as anything new, of course, we've had Race to the Top money now this is the end of our second year, and we've got 2 more years to go. And so this is the reflective of what we believe on the high end of what we might spend of that money. The Teacher Incentive Fund grant, I can't remember if it was on last year's or not. I can't remember when we received it, but that is basically a performance pay grant for a certain number of schools for the teachers and administrators in that school. The Magnet School Assistance Program grant, I believe we had last year, but it's fairly new, and it has a specific term. But other than those, I don't think there's anything in here to point out that's necessarily new.
Okay.
I'll add just a little bit of that. The Magnet School Assistance Program is a 3-year grant, and this is the second year. Next year will be the 3rd year of that grant, $4 million a year for that, for a total of $12 million. And Race to the Top we've ramped that up. The first year we expended about $3 million in Race to the Top. Second year, over a 15-month period of time, $14 million. So we've got 2 years left in the Race to the Top grant, and about half of the funding left in that.
Okay.
Back to your question, Mayor Dean, about the number of students that live in the Pearl Cone cluster and take advantage of the zone choice option. I was just told that's 499 students currently taking advantage of that zone choice option, where we provide transportation to a school outside the Pearl Cone cluster.
Okay, thank you.
And
Okay.
that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very thorough. Let me just start off with a couple questions related to some of the statistics. So the dropout rate from what dropped from 6.7 to 2.2 over what time period?
4-year period of time.
4 years. And how do you, is it as simple as measuring the dropout rate is just the number of students who leave school before graduating, or?
Yes. It's this is a statistic that I think particularly shows trends, because this is one of our statistics that has not changed over the past 4 years. As you know, we've gone through standards changes and testing changes and graduation changes, graduation rate changes, but this is called the event dropout rate, and it is a 12 calendar month period of time when all grades are covered, grades 9 through 12. Any student who leaves school in grades 9 through 12 or grades 8 through 12, if they happen to be older 8th graders. And so that percentage has dropped from 6.7% 4 years ago to 2.2% this last year. The last year, the last 2 years' data is particularly good for us because it dropped in 1 year from 4.3% to 2.2%. We feel that's a direct reflection of the alternative programs that we put in place in our high schools to keep kids in school. In contrast, our graduation rate dropped a little bit this year. It went from 82.9% to 76%, and the reason for that drop in graduation rate is because the state changed the way that it calculates graduation rate. It went from a 5-year graduation rate to 4 years and a summer, and that works against us when we have a high population of a high immigrant population, a high population of English learners, because those students come into our school system and learn to speak English and also meet all the requirements for graduation. So we have a number of students who are on 5-year graduation plans, and so that reduced that. Even though those students are still graduating from high school in 5 years period of time, we don't get credit for them in the graduation rate.
So basically, your graduation rates had been moving up, and then there was a different standard or different analysis done, which caused it to drop a little bit.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then
we do expect it to continue to go up, though, even with the new standard now. Last year was the benchmark on that standard, and we expect our graduation rate to continue to climb.
What's the correlation between the graduation rate and the dropout rate? I mean, I guess I would look at it and say the dropout rate is 2.2, and then the graduation rate should be 97.8 or something.
I can't correlate those two because that one number, that graduation rate's changing on us. I think the dropout rate's particularly important, though, because that means that we're keeping students in school. The 2% is a very low dropout rate, and we've got some students who graduate when they're 19 years old. We have some students who graduate when they're 20 years old, and they're real diplomas. They're not GEDs, or they're not other types of diplomas. So we're focusing on academic high school diplomas, and that's where that dropout rate goes down, because we literally recruit students who are at risk of dropping out to come into an alternative program and stay with us and graduate from high school.
And then let's, one of the things that you mentioned is asset, and I think one of the first things you and I worked on together was we hosted a seminar or a meeting where we talked about teacher recruitment and retention. And one of, obviously there are recruitment techniques like Teach for America and the New Teachers Project, but one of the major things we talked about was the need for teacher salaries to be competitive with surrounding counties and the rest of the state and other major cities to help us retain and recruit the best. So we, under this plan, where basically you compress salaries and the starting salary goes to $40,000, we'll move from number 27 to number 3?
3.
All right. And will the teachers who are not starting teachers under the proposed budget, will teachers be receiving a pay increase?
Yes, we in making the adjustments to the schedules, and I don't have copies with me, but we can provide all of those schedules to you to show you the detail of that. Every teacher will receive a minimum of 1.97%, no matter where they fall on the scale. But we've also compressed the other part of the scale so that every teacher will receive a minimum of 1.97%. As you know, the governor proposed 2.5%, so we have an obligation to teachers to make sure that they get at least that amount. The compression at the bottom of the scale is quite simple. You make the same thing for the first 5 years. Our beginning pay now is a little less than $35,000 a year, and it graduates up. It takes 5 years. You have to begin the 6th year to reach a level of $40,000 a year. And the bottom of our scale is where we're not competitive with cities like us. So by taking the bottom off of that scale, we can make an adjustment I guess it's debatable, but a regular, an attainable or reasonable cost to get that pay up. When you look at our upper levels in our salary schedules for graduate degrees, for PhDs, for 10, 15, 20 years experience, we get much more competitive. We rank in the from 5th to 8th or 9th in the state, depending on where you find a place on that scale. We compress, we cut the bottom off, and we get much more competitive.
So when you do the compression, will the teachers that we've hired over the last 4 to 5 years, will they also go up to 40,000? I mean, if a teacher's
Yes.
at 34 something, they'll go up to 40,000.
That's correct. Every step between 0 years experience and 5 would move to the 40,000 level. Every teacher who makes less than 40,000 presently would move to the 40,000.
And then the teachers who have been here longer than 5 years would benefit from the pay increase that the governor has talked about.
Correct.
Plus their normal step increase.
Plus the normal step increase.
Correct.
How many teachers are in that 5-year window?
I don't have that number with me, but I bet there's somebody behind me that can give me that answer.
Anybody
pretty
know that
quickly.
number?
I believe there's about 3,500.
Okay, in that 0 to 5-year window.
3,500?
Yeah, that's our biggest category. 0 to 5.
It's a big number. Tell me. She said she believed it was 3,500, which is their biggest category. Is that, you guys, yeah,
She calculated it, so I guess.
she would know?
She doesn't make mistakes.
Congratulations.
And then the hope would be that by doing this, you're placing Nashville in a position where, compared to the other counties in the state, we are competitive or more competitive than them, and we're competitive with other major cities.
Absolutely, absolutely. Our goal is to be very competitive in being able to hire the very best teachers that we can for Nashville. I'll repeat myself, but Nashville will never be the easiest place to work. Urban school systems have challenges that other places don't face, but we can be the best place to work. We want to recruit the best coming in, and we want to give them the best support system we can to have outstanding teachers in all of our classrooms. And we think this will really put us there. In fact, anecdotally, we've already attended job fairs. We have a new recruiter now who is doing great work for us. And we've already received feedback from applicants at University of Tennessee, at Knoxville, and other universities who are attracted to just the rumor that we may be raising our pay to this level. And I think, I think it really helps us communicate objectively the fact that we value great teachers. This is a place where we want the very best teachers in all of our schools and for all of our children. And I think this really puts us in an advantage in doing that.
So, in this budget proposal, there are 100 new teachers, but overall, over the course of the school year, how many new teachers do we hire? Any idea?
It's about 500 a year.
Okay.
Well, and also in terms of the increasing the starting salary, I mean, I think one of the things that was really the foundation for all the discussions that went around asset and looking at ways to improve our public education is a recognition that teachers are the key ingredient in improving the school system.
Absolutely.
And unless you're competitive in attracting the talent, you're not going to make any progress.
Absolutely, absolutely. A companion piece to that is Race to the Top, and we're using Race to the Top to invest in people in our school district. Professional development, leadership development are major components of what we're doing there. So we want to recruit the best, and then we want to really help them with career development, have the best career development program that you can have also.
So there is an increase, in terms of the teacher hiring, there's actually an increase in the number of teachers that will be in the school system by about 100.
Yes.
And that's a reflection of what?
Projected student growth. We relied for a couple of years on the federal job stimulus money, and of course we used that up. And a year ago we had to we had to reduce a number of positions in our district. So it really pushed us up in terms of class size. We really got very tight in our allotment last year. So we feel like this 100 teacher request is necessary for us to stay under the state guidelines on class size.
And will, of these 100, will they be working in specific areas? I mean, is there a need for teachers, English as a second language, or is there a breakdown?
It's pretty much across the board. June's not here now, but we recognize the need for it's K-12. We have a number of English learner teachers that we require, but basically it's for class size and to maintain our master schedules in our high schools and middle schools.
And I'll interject. As I said earlier when we were looking at document number 1, what we look at this point in time is a pool of teachers, regular ed, EL, CTE. Since master schedules aren't complete yet for next year by the schools, since we have really preliminary student projections. So we look at that pool in determining how many total teaching positions we have, and then once they're known, then they get coded to the proper account code. I will point out that the State Department of Education does not have a separate code for English language learners. They put all of those teachers into the regular education category. What we've always done is to have a separate category for English learners, account number 2324. And what we've also tried to do is to better define what is an English learner teacher, because we have a number of schools that are hiring teachers with dual certification. For instance, a third grade teacher that's an elementary certification, but she's also an English learner certification. And so do you code her a regular education teacher or an English learner teacher? And so we're working on trying to come up with a good definition of what English learner teachers are, since the state doesn't recognize those separately as far as budget account codes go. And so you'll see some changes where we are actually moving some teaching positions from the regular education category, account 2320, over to the English learner category, account 2324, trying to get the teachers in the right account number. But the vast majority of the increase that's being requested, as Dr. Register said, would be to maintain the current class size or with our staffing formula based upon the projected student growth.
In the 100, is there new special needs teachers being hired?
There are. I think there's 14 and a half additional special needs exceptional education teacher requests. That is the request that the exceptional education department made for additional teaching positions, and so we've reflected that in account 2820.
Okay. And is that a reflection of estimates of what the new student population will be, or is there a need to increase staffing?
I think it's a combination of things. I think one of the things that the Exceptional Education Department is having to deal with is the loss of the federal stimulus dollars, which provided additional IDEA, federal IDEA money. And so in addition to what's included in account 2820 for exceptional education, as I mentioned, there are also federal IDEA dollars estimated at $17.9 million for next year that include a number of teaching positions as well.
We also are very sensitive to the need to increase inclusionary practices in our schools. And we're providing services for special needs children. We're trying to provide services in all schools. And that does cost some additional positions when we provide a service in a school that might have not had it in the past, where children were bused out of a school of zone to another school to receive services. So we're trying, and that's a phase-in program. We're phasing that one in very quickly.
Okay. And then for Teach for America, the plan is for next school year is to increase the number of Teach for America teachers new teachers coming into the system from 50 to 80?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And could you talk a little bit about, is there data showing the effectiveness of the Teach for America teachers?
The data that we have, this is the first year that we've been able to collect the data and aggregate it by source of teachers. what university they attended, what program they attended, and Teach for America teachers as a group are outperforming all the other groups. And there's not another way to say that. And they're very bright young people who are coming into the system and who are achieving at very high rates. So we'll have a second year's data pretty quickly, value-added data on these teachers, and we feel like they're a real addition to our school system. What we want to do is do a better job of retaining them. They have a 2-year commitment, and then many of them go on to other places. But we're seeing some positive trends in that way, and I think some of the other efforts that we're taking with Asset will help us keep a higher percentage of those students past the first 2 years. But let me say that if we keep a teacher who's performing at 5 times the rate of another teacher for a couple of years, it's worth the investment.
In terms of of charter schools, you're planning on or estimating that there will be some 700 additional students going into charter schools?
Correct, yes, sir.
All right, and charter schools, of course, are publicly funded schools, and there's an amount that is calculated that follows a student. Is that how that works?
It is a State Department of Education calculation formula that determines state and local revenue per pupil, and that state and local revenue per pupil amount is then sent to each charter school based upon their total student enrollment, and then they, of course, spend it within their budget. And so there is a per pupil amount that is considered an operating transfer out of our general purpose fund over to the charter school fund.
Okay. And the number that you're using for the increase in students in these public charter schools is based upon 2 new schools opening? Is that?
It's based upon two new schools opening, plus there are some existing charter schools that have a planned increase in students where they're adding a grade a year. And so taking all of that into consideration, the 2 new schools plus the projected growth in the existing charter schools.
And just for I think for the people watching this hearing, that there's been a lot of news lately about the number of applicants to be certified to open a charter school. Those applicants would not be opening a school in the next school year. It'd be the following year if they're selected.
Correct, if their applications are approved.
Right. And then the question we ask every year, is there a point at which for public charter schools you have the number of students in the charter schools and the money that follows the students, is there a number at which that begins to be reflected in how the regular public schools are funded, or is there a reduction that takes place?
There's not a magic number. What we always look at is projected student enrollment for the next year and apply our staffing formula to that student enrollment. And so if there's a large number of students that are coming out of 1 or 2 individual schools, there could be a need to reduce some teachers in those schools themselves. The thing that we have, the dynamic that we have going on at the same time is that the district is growing overall in student population, so we're needing to continue to add additional teachers just for that growth. But we look at every school individually when we apply the staffing formula for number of teachers, and so if that school is projected to decline in enrollment, then if the staffing formula warrants, they would decline in number of teachers, and so we would have a reduction in the number of teachers at that 1 or 2 or 3 individual schools if a fairly large number of students come out of that school to attend a charter school.
And then go ahead.
I was going to ask a question on the calculation of the number of charter school students. Do we include what's taking place at Cameron in that number, or is that separate? Or
we do include
what's the same?
Place.
Okay.
Yes, we do include them as charter school students. The per pupil amount is sent to LEAD, which operates the Cameron college prep program.
Right. And I think, Chris, you mentioned in your opening remarks that the per pupil amount was going up?
It's a calculation of state and local revenue per pupil, and so when the state and local revenue amount goes up, in relation to the total population, then the calculation itself increases, the result increases. And so we're projecting an increase in that, and it may even be higher than what we've projected. So the State Department is working on a new formula, a new calculation formula as they implement their achievement school district schools and have a per pupil amount there. That per pupil amount needs to match what we're using for charter school students, and so they're working with us as well as Memphis on providing a template that would be used by everyone for the charter school calculation.
Makes sense.
Do you consider, in terms of how you analyze where we're at, do you look at per pupil expenditures, I mean, as a statistic?
Not necessarily. We know that there is a per pupil expenditure amount that the State Department puts out as part of its state report card. That amount is somewhat misleading in the fact that it includes all sources of revenue, which not only would be the general purpose operating budget, but it includes all the food service department revenue, as well as all federal funding, as well as a portion of the State Department of Education's budget. Each district's pro rata share of what's called state administrative aid. And the denominator in that calculation is average daily attendance rather than average daily membership. And so you have an inflated numerator, deflated denominator, which results in a larger number. Of course, it's calculated that way for every district across the state, but it is an inflated number. I suspect what we'll see over time with the reduction in federal stimulus dollars as well as the reduction in the federal education jobs program money, there'll probably be some changes in what that number looks like, maybe even downward, as we have lost the federal funding in those two programs.
There's an important statistic, and I don't have the number on this, but everyone in Nashville needs to recognize that the great percentage of funding for public schools comes from local government, not from state government. We receive among the lowest per pupil in state revenue in the state. Are we lowest now?
No, actually Sevier County is lower than we are, but that's because of their fiscal capacity relating to sales tax collections. But we're really low in the state funding per pupil, BEP funding per pupil.
Because of our revenue abilities, or?
Because of our fiscal capacity, which means the quote-unquote ability to fund education from your own local sources, the way that that's calculated. We have the highest fiscal capacity. Davidson County has the highest fiscal capacity in the state, which reduces the percentage funding we receive from the state.
Yeah, and then to change that would require the state legislature or the state government to change the way their formula for compensation, or BEP formula.
Correct.
Yes. All right. Let me, this is actually not a softball question. You know, we have over the last few years, and I think for some time, been very supportive of schools, and we all want to see public education improve and be, as you say, the best place to work, and a place that gives all our kids here an opportunity to succeed in life. And this is a question I think I'll get asked and you'll be asked. What is a fair measure of accountability? What is a fair measure for us to say the investment is worth it, the investment is working?
Well, I think that's a hard question. That's not a softball question, but I think we really what we should not look for are quick fixes, and we don't have any. We don't, over the 3 years I've been here, we don't have a lot of quick fixes. What's really important to watch are trends. Are our students being successful? Are our students increasing their level of achievement, their growth statistics? Bottom line for us is, are our students achieving at higher levels? And we feel this year is going to be an important year in testing for us. Our data won't be completed until the end of the summer, but the test scores are stable now for 2 years. What the standard is, what the measure is, and I think to look at trends, to look at how our students are achieving, is the bottom line for us. We need to see results.
I think, one of the results we talked about today, the drop in the dropout rate.
Right.
To me, something I've talked about a lot is very encouraging. I mean, that is a sense that kids who were falling out and, nothing good comes from dropping out of school. That is a real accomplishment, and you deserve a lot of credit for it. But is the graduation rate or test scores, are they equally important, or is the test scoring more important?
I think multiple factors. I think graduation rate's important. That trend needs to go up. Comparative data, how do we compare with the rest of the country, particularly how do we compare with other urban school systems in the country, is important. We've seen positive movement in graduation rate. Test scores can be measured, and we actually have an advantage in Tennessee because we have student achievement data, but we also have value-added data to show how, if students are showing gains, if they're showing a year's growth in a year's time. I think another good measure is now in the state teacher accountability, and we now are receiving data and are required to evaluate teachers based on student achievement. That's still a work in progress. The state still hasn't done everything it's got to do to give us data that we can trust in that regard, but we're making real progress. So are our teachers achieving? And I think a measure of accountability for us is, are we hiring good teachers, and are we dealing effectively with low-performing teachers? And are our teachers achieving at high levels? And that data will be available as we go forward.
Okay. Rich?
A couple questions just on the insurance fund. Obviously we've been having some deficit issues there, and so you think that's a pretty sizable increase, 10.1, which I think is probably indicative of that. So you think we're going to have that fund balance in better shape at the end of this fiscal year? We're trending in the right direction, I think, is the answer.
Yes, I think it'll be trending in the right direction at the end of this fiscal year, and then because this follows an 18% increase last year. Right. And then with this 10% increase, we believe it'll be where it needs to be for June 30, 2013.
Good, okay. And then last year, we were able, you really were able to grow the fund balance by some $7 million. Do you have a sense of how your expenditures are going this year, and do you have any preliminary sense of where you think your fund balance will be at the end of this fiscal year?
We think we'll be fairly close on the expenditures. At this point, we've done some really rough analysis. Looks like we may be $2 million underneath the appropriated amount. Mm-hmm. Revenues do look stronger. Sales tax revenue looks stronger. We feel like that we're going to meet our projections on state BEP revenue, so we think that we probably exceed revenue projections by $3 or $4 million. So at this point, a very rough estimate would be adding about $5 million to fund balance at June 30.
Okay.
So let me, one of the other things that we're considering, we've been focused on the operations budget, but is the capital spending budget. And you've mentioned that the schools have needs in the area of $182 million. And there are clearly, I guess from my own observations, there are clearly some priorities there. I think, Stratford High School, I think, is a school. Could you talk about is there a ranking in terms of schools and what they need, and where would Stratford be on that ranking?
Stratford is right at the top, as a matter of fact. And there are other schools that are that way. Chris is really directly administering the facilities operations now. We have a pretty sophisticated way of grading buildings and evaluating buildings, and we have a rank order that and a 10-year facility plan that's revised every year. A board committee looks at that and makes revisions to that every year. The two pressures we have is again are growth and the condition of buildings. So I say Stratford's right at the top. It has one of the lowest ratings. It needs to be renovated, and that's a pretty high cost. It's a $20 million cost to renovate Stratford High School. let me jump to the other side and talk about what's happening in the southern end of the county. A lot of our enrollment growth is coming there, and many of our schools are over capacity in the southern end of the county. Oliver Middle School is one. It's a great middle school, but the enrollment's just gone up so much there. We, in our facility plan, and I would say it would be a top priority, would be to put an addition at schools like Oliver Middle School and A.Z. Kelly in the lower end of the county. There's a project that we've talked about a lot, and I think it's one that's really important, is that we have a Hume Fogg, which is one of the great high schools in the country that needs a gymnasium. Exactly, and so that's on, and it's been on our priority list for years. So there are a number of projects like that. I don't want to get too far out with individual projects, because I think once we deal with an amount of money, if we have some capital money, I think there's a board committee, a facilities committee, that really needs to take a look at that set of projects. But because of the data that we have in the background, we know that we'd be pretty close. Everybody in the room could pretty well agree, based on the data that we have, about what we need. Let me say one other thing or two other things about capital improvements. We have our school buses are getting old. Some of them are ready to age out. We have $10 million worth of, actually $11 million worth of transportation needs to replace school buses, and we've pretty much got to do that. We've also been behind, slowed down on our information technology, our technology budget. We'd like to increase that. And then there's one that's not quite as attractive when you just put it out in the community, but really important, and that's infrastructure. HVAC systems, heating and air conditioning systems, other renovations to systems in schools that are behind, and we need some major maintenance money to put into a number of buildings like that.
Yeah, I think, going back to Stratford, and we've had these discussions, you and I, that there are good things going on in the building.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing to stress. There's the building, and then there's what really happens in the building. And there's been a lot of exciting projects there, and I think good leadership, and I think cooperation from the private sector to make a difference at Stratford. But I would acknowledge just from my visits there that something needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think with Hume Fogg, again, we've had these conversations. I think the situation where Hume Fogg students don't have a gym and haven't had one for years and been asking for it for years is pretty pressing. The southeastern portion of the county is the fastest growing part of our city, and there's a need for us to keep up with the infrastructure needs of that part of and there's a lot of students there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of young families in that part of the county, so that's a good point. But we'll look at all that very carefully. Greg, you have any?
Nope.
All right, well, thank you very much, and we appreciate you doing it.
Thank you very much.